In this video, we're going to discuss how to mix and work with our tints and shades for the second set of swatches that we're going to be doing. So for working with tints and shades, we're going to be thinking about something similar in regards to how we're going to swatch and work with our colors. So for this one, what I'm going to do is we are going to start with our tints and then we'll work to our shades. So for our tints, we want to start with our primary white. And we're going to set it up and do it exactly the same way that we did with our 12 hues around the color wheel. So what I'm going to do right now, just so that you have a reference, is I'm actually going to swatch my white so that you can see what my white looks like on the page. So you can actually see that my white is definitely a different white than the page. You can see that's a little bit more brilliant. And so with tints, it is going to be the tiniest, smallest amount conceivable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get like the tiniest little amount that I can onto my brush, and then I'm going to mix it into my white. I never want to mix my white into my color because that will just use up your whole tube really, really quickly. All right. So I'm pretty happy with that. If you didn't see the change, you'll definitely see the change when you swatch it. So here I'm going to go ahead and swatch it, and I can already see that there's a color, that there's a change being added into that white. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take steps, nice slow steps with lots of swatches in between so that we can see how that color is changing, and so that how we can see how we can make like a nice range of tints that we can work with in our composition. So once again, we're going to kind of swatch at each step. We're going to exponentially add more. We're going to try to not overshoot a step, which I might have done right there, but we'll see. And of course, you're welcome to add more white. So if you kind of feel like you overshot it, which I'm going to swatch and just see what happened, you know, you can always add more white in. So I'm going to swatch it. And that's a little bit of a jump. I would actually want something kind of in between the two. You can see that there's a big difference between the two. So if I wanted to, I could add some more white and kind of start to step backwards a little bit. I'm going to continue to add the magenta to my white that I'm mixing. And I'm going to swatch it as I go. And then essentially we want to get back to the magenta that we are starting with for our step. So see, that's a really nice step right there. You only need 5 steps for this, but it helps to have, I think, more than that so you can kind of figure out what is a nice range for working with your tints. And so I'll swatch the next one. And so see, there's a really nice kind of change in terms of your saturation. So now we're adding a more saturated color. So now we're working towards our prismatic pure hue, getting as close as we can to it. So, and you'll see we're going to kind of jump even farther as we're working with our magenta. And the more magenta I add, the less luminous it's going to become, because we're going to be kind of disrupting the white base of it. And so you'll see we'll jump a little bit farther and a little bit faster for the sake of the video. And of course, as you need to add more paint, you are welcome to. So I'm going to make another swatch. I'm going to add some more magenta. And so really the reason that we're doing this is so that you can see those subtle shifts in color. You know, a lot of times when we mix a color, we kind of just stick with the first thing that we mix. And instead, this is forcing you really to kind of understand the difference between this swatch and that swatch, which there is a big difference between the two. So you'll notice I'm adding larger amounts of the magenta. And we're going to get closer, closer and closer back to that original color. And at a certain point, what might end up happening is you might start mixing this color into your magenta to get there faster. And so we'll actually start to do that. And you'll see that that's making a big difference too. So, and then one thing I'm going to do off to the side is I am going to swatch what that pure magenta looks like. And we'll actually stop right here and we'll see how close we are. And you'll see here is our pure magenta. And so Maybe we should have a step in between that, but that's pretty close to kind of what we're working with. So you'll see you've got a nice range of tints. I might have wanted to work up here a little bit more subtlety, and then getting down to our pure saturation. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to work with our shades. And so we'll talk about how we can mix those shades in terms of working with adding black to a color. So the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to work with something where it's going to be fairly easy to see it, is we'll work with yellow. And so yellow is going to be one of those big changes really pretty immediately. So you won't need a ton of black. This will be much more subtle as we're working. So this is something for you to think about as we're going through. So I'm going to work with my black into my yellow, and we'll go from there. So the same thing that we saw before, you know, the tiniest amount. So I'm going to swatch my pure prismatic color, and we'll start at the top and swatch it that way because we're going to work in the opposite direction. And you'll see that yellow is really quite luminous. So like the tiniest little bit of black is going to immediately change my yellow. Most students are pretty uncomfortable mixing their yellows just because it is not the prettiest range of colors by far. And we'll go ahead and swatch that. So you can see immediately, I might have even added a little bit too much black. Like we can see immediately that there's a dramatic change in it. I'm going to jump more quickly forward just for the sake of the video, but you can see even that amount of black that I just added is really a big, strong change in the type of color that I'm getting. So of course I would want to have some steps in between there, but now we're getting into our shades. And so the shades get harder to see because the more black that you add, the only way that you're really going to be able to see or discern those shades is by comparing it to another shade. So you can see here, only because we're comparing these two together can we see the difference between the two. And of course, we're making our way towards a pure black. And you can see here I'm pretty close. And actually, if I wanted to just grab a little bit of that black and make sure it's not being, you can see that I'm really pretty close right there. So clearly I need to expand my range right here. You can see the subtlety, the more you add that black, the subtlety between these really gets hard to discern. So here is where I would want to mix a lot more and kind of be able to see those subtle differences, especially here where I made too big of a jump. But this gives you a good idea of kind of like the range and the amount that you need to work with for your tints, and then also for your shades as well.